Toby! Oh, wow.
So here's something for you. You've been diagnosed with breast cancer. And yeah, guys, you have been too. But here's the thing. What do you do when you're diagnosed with something that's going to make a difference in your life in a big, big way? Today on Arisen Strength, I've got my dear friend. Her name is Connie Bramer. She's the author of How Connie Got Your Rack Back, and she's the founder of the GYRB Foundation. I'm going to let her tell you about that and more. It's all about inspiration through awareness and motivation. So let's get to it because your time is right now. I'm here with my good friend. Her name is Connie Bramer of the GYRB Foundation, also the author of How Connie Got Your Rack Back. Hey, Connie, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I am doing awesome. Thank you so very much. Folks, I've known Connie for a little bit now. We actually are very dear friends. We've talked a lot about a lot of different things, and this is really going to be an interview that I think that you were going to enjoy. It not only talks about the adversity of what somebody might go through, but it also talks about the victories of what I keep telling everybody that you can still have despite what it is that you might be going through. And I think that this is a perfect example of it. So Connie and we met, 2 years ago? It seems like it was a little bit longer.
I think it was about a year ago.
Okay, just seemed longer.
I don't know how to take that in a good way or a bad way.
It was good. So I had the opportunity in order to meet with Connie in person. I've met her a few times in different, meetings that we had together and everything like that. And I can tell you that this lady is somebody who you can really look at and say, you know what? It's okay to have heroes. It's okay to have everyday people be somebody that you can aspire to, because this is one of those examples. And that's not just because you're a friend of mine. That's just a fact.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So tell me, when you were younger, you had dreams, you had aspirations, that you probably had some ideas of what it is that you wanted to do, because sometimes somebody in my audience is out there and they're saying, man, I was planning on doing this. I was going to school for that. I really had an idea of what it is that I was going to do. And then some things just kind of got in the way of that. And then all hell broke loose. And, in this way, it kind of happened to you. So let's start out with, how did you go about what you were doing when you were younger? What were some of the dreams, aspirations you had?
Well, first, isn't it funny that happens to just about everybody?
Mm-hmm.
That you go to college for something and you're doing something entirely different, or you had an idea of what you wanted to be and you did a 180. So when I was a kid, I really wanted to be a pediatrician. I loved medicine. Like, I was the first person at the playground when someone was bleeding to fix it. Mm-hmm. So I obviously had issues, but I wanted to be a pediatrician. And in college, I studied biology, was going to go for pre-med. And actually prior to that, I was a candy striper. My mom was a nurse, so she was very close with a doctor at a local hospital, and I would go on rounds with him. So I learned a lot, and I was just really trying to soak it all up like a sponge, and I really loved it. So I went to college for biology, and then I joined a sorority and was having far too much fun, and decided I really wasn't in a space to do biology and chemistry and physics and all of that at that time. So I switched to a psychology and music double major. I know that's like a complete 180. I was going to become a music therapist. So my dad said to me, I am not paying, and I'm aging myself. This is in 1989 when I wanted to transfer to Temple University. He said, I'm not spending $15,000 a year for you to go to this college and only make $15,000 when you get out. And I laugh at that now because my daughter goes to a private college and her tuition is north of $60,000. These private schools are crazy. So that it was $15,000, I laugh about that now. Yeah. But I was going to go, I was thinking of going for music therapy. Ended up not doing that, finished my psychology degree, but I really wanted to go into medicine. So my mom was really ill when I was in college with breast cancer. When my parents owned a car dealership, from the time I was born, my father owned a car dealership. And I never, ever dreamt of working there, ever. And then, I'm in my early 20s, just graduated from college. And my dad had always hired, older salesmen, like what you would think of as the typical car salesperson. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So he had hired a friend of our family's son who was a little younger than me, and he did really well. And my dad got thinking about it. He's like, why don't you come work for me? And I said, okay, only if I can still take my classes, my prerequisite courses to go to medical school, because that was my plan. Like, I got done. I did what I needed to do to get through college. I had a good time. I danced on tables. I did stupid stuff. And when I got out, I really realized that I wanted to go to medical school still, so that fire was still there from being a little kid. So I was taking classes like biochem, chem, biology, anatomy and physiology, all of those things while I was working for my father selling cars. And then something happened. My mom really took a turn for the worse with not being well with her cancer. And my dad said, I really need your help. So I wasn't forced to make this change. I wasn't forced to take this road, but it was a fork in the road. And I had to either choose myself and this career I wanted or my family. And I chose my family, and I don't regret it. A lot of people who own family businesses, you ask the kids, the second generations, they all have had that same kind of fork in the road.
It's funny because you're exactly right. And that's one of the reasons why I bring it up, because there are a ton of people out there who have families, have supporters of, have loved ones who are trying to support them through going through some stuff. My personal situation is that I decided that I was going to come back to New York. I lived in 16 states in this country. I was going to come back to New York, and I figured that I would love my family before I tried to kill them all. So,
that's a good thought.
It's like, but they were a little bit ahead of me because they decided the very next year they decided to become snowbirds. So they spent half of the year away from me anyways. That's not necessarily true. They had planned on doing that for, way before they even retired. Thing is that that's very true. When you end up having that fork in the road, hey, listen, you got to make a choice whether or not that you're doing it participatingly or not, because you can sit there and you can let life circumstances kind of take you along your path, or you can have some control. And it sounds like you decided to, take some control of your own.
Right. Well, there's a couple things I'll say about that. One, if you work for family, it is not easy. Mm-hmm. Like, I would hear my name, over the loudspeaker, my father say, Connie, come to my office. And I'd be like, oh God, here we go. And so I would go in his office, and because he would just yell at me about whatever,
right.
And I just had to take it because that was how it was. He couldn't like yell at the mechanic who screwed something up. He'd be like, Connie, you did, like going off on me. So I had to deal with that. But on the flip side, I had 3 years every day during the week, I got to see my mom. I mean, how many people can say that they spend hours a day with their mom, who's like, my mom was like my best friend. When I lost her, she was 53. I was 26. It was the most devastating thing. I'll never be over it. You never get over that. And I had 3 years that I could just hang out with her. I can't ever put a price on that, ever. So whatever decision I made, that was like the best one I could have made for me and for my mom. And I'm so glad I did it. So I was going back to school, decided not to do that. I ended up doing more stuff with my family business. And then, ironically, because I picked this fork in the road for my industry, I'm still in the automotive industry right now, but I have this other side of me, that does my foundation, which I know we're going to talk about. So everybody has something that is their, I don't want to say their job, because that kind of connotes that you don't like it, but everyone has their job, their livelihood, and then they've got a passion, Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, for me personally, listen, I was moving, like I said, through 16 states in this country, and the majority of it was because I was trying to find a place to fit. I was just trying to find a place to kind of like, okay, this is for me. This is where it is that I'm going to settle down. I wasn't like doing the same thing over and over and over again. I was kind of like throwing in some different ways of being able to do things because I didn't want to be labeled insanity, because that's really the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over again, but then expecting different results. And so
Right.
I was doing it differently. I was going from, whether it be a different type of job, or whether it be, did I decide to go into being more faith-based? Did I decide to try to be more conversational with people who I didn't know even, and try to be involved into their lives and try to, not just think about me? Was I more selfish with my time and going in that direction and just like putting my head down and saying that I'm going to do this and I'm going to make this work and I'm going to be successful because of that? Whatever it was, I did a number of different avenues. I didn't realize that the common denominator was between my two ears. And it was really my mindset. It was really my thinking that was really getting me to the point where I was having my struggling and my suffering because of it. When you're sitting there and you're talking about having that fork in the road, choosing that path that you decided to choose, you had 3 years with your mom. I know that you're very attached to that memory of her. Sounds like she was an amazing woman.
She was a rock star. She was hilarious.
Yeah, I can just imagine. I would have loved to meet her. Here it is now. You've got like your dad is kind of like yelling at you. Now, let me ask a question. Some of the things that when he would go ahead and he would yell at you, I imagine that they probably had nothing to do with business. It was probably just the frustrations of life, and it just kind of like boiled over. Am I right in saying that?
No, it was about business, and he would just like vent to me, because
Okay.
I was like, not that I was an easy target, but I was one that couldn't do anything about it. You know what I mean? My name was on the sign. I had to, just like his was. The only way out of it is to quit. So he just, and it was difficult. I worked with my brother. My brother was kind of can I say this, a shit show.
Yeah.
And he just did whatever he wanted. And I was expected to be there, work bell to bell. It was just a different balance. It was very reminiscent of growing up. Like when my brother had to learn all the planets, the whole family learned the planets. We learned, the genus, species, phylum, whatever the heck that is. We learned all the capitals of the states. Just was kind of it kind of pilfered over into work life, and it was a hard family dynamic. But when I look back on that experience, I really grew a lot. I think sometimes when you're in a crap situation, whatever it is, I'm not saying working for my parents was crappy, but I'm just saying when you're in a situation, you're deep in it and you don't have the ability to be reflective. Yep. And I think years later, I learned a lot. My father taught me everything about business. My mother taught me the importance of building relationships with people. That is the key to life, really, is building strong relationships. So she taught me that. I learned a lot from both of my parents doing that. So I think those are life skills that I've carried with me my whole life. And then just working with my brother, I was already hardwired to deal with that because I dealt with it for years. It all worked out. I made the right decision. I had talked to my dad about buying him out. And I just decided, I was 26, my mom had died, and it was maybe a year later. And I just said, you know what? I don't know if I want to do this anymore. And ironically, so I'm still in the car business. I've worked in different facets of it, got married, had 2 kids. And then just after my 39th birthday, found out I had breast cancer. And it's kind of crazy because when my mom was diagnosed, I'm the 4th generation of my family to have breast cancer. So my mom died at 53, my grandmother at 54, and my great-grandmother at 60. So at this point in the game, I'm the only one who has survived more than 7 years after having breast cancer. So I think that's a pretty big milestone. I'm almost 12 years out. But my mom always said to me when she found out, she said, I've always been feeling that this is coming for me. So as I got older, I felt that too. But my mother, she wasn't diagnosed till she was 46. I was diagnosed not even a month after my 39th birthday. So it just kept getting younger and younger every generation in my mother's family. I always felt like it was coming for me too. So I get diagnosed with breast cancer. My kids are 7 and 8 at the time, really small, and I had just gotten divorced. And that was a trying time. I don't know if I was talking to you about this the other day, but somebody else, we were talking about having an illness and working and like going through chemo, or I didn't have radiation, but going through chemo or anything difficult. I was really fortunate because I had a job where I worked from home. I traveled a lot by plane, but I didn't do it during that time. I had a really understanding boss. I mean, in the middle of the day, I'd be taking a nap after chemo.
Right.
And a lot of people don't have that ability. And I think what really fired me up to start my foundation, one of my friends from high school had meals delivered to me after my chemo. Like one night, a delivery guy knocks on my door. He says, I have your order. I'm like, I didn't order anything. He leaves, comes back and says, are you Connie Bramer? I said, yes. And he said, well, this is for you. So it got me thinking about the bigger picture for people, because I was fortunate to work from home. So I'm thinking, what are these people doing who, one, can't work from home, two, have to go into a job, and three, can't work? Like, how are they putting meals on the table for their family?
Right.
So one day I'm sitting in chemo, no hair, bald as a Q-tip. And then I've got my little cap on and I'm sitting there and of course, like I'm with all these older people getting chemo. Like they put you in a room with these little like fabric dividers and the TVs, this is 12 years ago. So the TVs were like hung on the wall, like they, with an arm, you know what I mean? Like the arm that came out. And I didn't watch TV. I worked with my laptop then, but I looked around and they were all like really older people. And I thought, what's happening with all the younger people like me who need to work? Like all these people that I was with were probably retired, not that that's a great time to have cancer. I'm not saying that, but like I'm talking about people who are young with kids. How are they managing? So I got thinking, how can I do this and have it be where people get meals?
So you were now found this experience as to where somebody's bringing you food. You said that you didn't order it. They said, your name's Connie Bramer. You said, yeah, and here it is. And then you said, well, there's something here. There's something that I need to think on. And then you started thinking about how it is that you can start making a difference for others that are going through something similar to you.
Exactly. And what was so funny is we've talked about my Caring Bridge website, which became my book. And I would write, my antics, because I'm a smart ass. I would write all these stupid things that happened to me and things that I laughed about. And at this time that I was getting things delivered, like I would get chocolate covered strawberries, which I love. Like someone would send that to me. Someone would send me, those fruit baskets. I can't think of the name of it. And there's all these different things that people would send to me. And I'm like, who is sending me these things? Like no one would own up to them. It was all a big mystery, which drove me insane, Yeah, right. So I would write in there, I'm like, who just ordered me Pizza Hut? And then finally when one of my friends fessed up that he ordered a few of the things, but some of the other friends, I still don't know who ordered it. But so I wrote this journal. And like I was telling you before that I wrote this journal because it was my way to communicate with people without everyone, calling me or emailing me and having to repeat my story of how I'm doing constantly. It's like a great platform for anybody who's ill that they can go on. It's called caringbridge.org. And you just start a page and then you tell people that you have a page. And then they can come to it, they log in, you have a login, and then they can see what you've written and they can comment on it, So like it was my support group meeting at the time, but I didn't know it. Okay. Like I would write something and then everyone would say, Con, you're doing great, you're halfway through chemo, whatever it was. And I had a really difficult journey. I mean, oncologists and I talk about it sometimes. It's like, I don't know how like you had so many things go wrong. Because it's like Murphy's Law, if it could go wrong, it would go wrong. I've had 13 breast cancer related surgeries. I've had almost 6 months of chemotherapy. I had a lot of issues with my chemotherapy. I had neuropathy in my legs, allergic reaction. Like I had a lot of things that went on. So what I wrote about in my blog was just like raw humor, really. And then one of my friends, when I was well, said to me, because I just stopped writing after I got better. And my friend Renee said to me, I think if you put this all into a book, it would help a lot of people. And I thought about it for a few months. And then I went back on my Caring Bridge website and read all of my posts. And man, is that like the biggest realization as to where you've come from. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
the same thing. Like I tell the patients that we help to keep a gratitude journal. Like it's so important to be grateful and like write down 3 things at night before you go to bed that you're really grateful for.
Mm-hmm.
And, like one day my grateful list was like 1, got up. 2, didn't puke all day. 3, had milk for the kids for their cereal. It can be that stupid, but it's
that's
like
important.
It is, but well, it is if you want to have your Lucky Charms. But I mean, it is like really important to keep your mind in a positive headspace.
Even the little things.
Even the little things.
Right.
And it's when you keep a gratitude journal, it just makes your mind go into a more positive place. But like even now with what we've got going on with the pandemic, I've been trying to get back to doing my gratitude journal because I don't even want to watch the news right now because a lot of crazy stuff's going on. So you have to like pick things. It levitates your mind to a different space, if that makes sense. Like just trying to be positive. Sometimes it's hard to be positive,
Even if it keeps you off the ground for just an inch.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's what's really important. And the reason why I bring this up is because I deal with clinical depression, right? You know that.
Yep.
And, it's really easy to kind of like get into that fixated mindset to where it kind of drives you into the damn ground. I mean, hell, we're talking about suicidality here when it came to me. So it's like, there ain't no lower, right? I wanted to be 6 feet under. I didn't just want to be on the ground. And when you're talking about your journal, while you were going through what you were going through, and we kind of just went over that kind of quick, but the reality of the situation is that you went through hell when it came to your situation, when it came to your breast cancer. You had a double mastectomy. You ended up with a number of different surgeries. You had a lot of things that probably were going on. I can only think of the things that I went through when it came to chemo itself. It's not altogether pleasant. Matter of fact, it sucks. I can tell you that there was a time as to where I was sitting at my desk and I was looking at the computer screen and somebody came over and said, "Shane, why don't you go home?" And I'm like, "No, I'm okay. I'm okay." And it's like, "Shane, you've been looking at that computer screen, the same screen for 2 hours. Go
What?
home."
2 hours?
2 hours. So I was just basically just kind of zoned out.
Yeah.
But trying to do what it is that I could do, trying not to let my circumstances beat me and doing everything that I can. And sometimes that can be the way to go, but at the other times, sometimes that's not necessarily the path that you really want to take, because if you're looking at it from that standpoint as a fight, well, then you're always in a fight. And you decided to do it a little bit different. You decided to go and say, "Listen, I'm going to be me as much as I can." See, the thing is because me, has bad days. Me has good days. Me laughs up a storm every once in a while. Me will cuss you out every once in a while, right? That was you. And so you just kind of shared that in your journal. Am I right or wrong? Right?
No, that's absolutely right. That's absolutely right.
So here it is. You're using your journal to basically just keep you going. And you had it to the point as to where it's like, okay, you want to know how I'm doing? Here's how I'm doing, right? And sometimes it might not be what it is that somebody might want to hear, but that's okay. And the audience needs to hear this, and that is, it's okay for you to journal like that, because it's keeping you balanced a little bit more balanced than what it is that you otherwise would. Because when you're sitting there and you're letting it out, it's almost like the old saying, you who wanted to go into psychology, here it is, you've got a spigot that's just dripping and you've got a bucket that's underneath that drip. Well, in the beginning, yeah, sure, that bucket can handle that drip without any problem. But over time, that water is going to keep on rising and rising and rising and rising and rising. And guess what? That little drip turns out to be an overflow. And so you end up finding yourself to where you have a whole lot of emotions going on, especially when you're going through some stuff. And so you decided to go ahead and be raw and real when it came to that journal. And then when you went to go back to look at it, you realized that, hey, I can use this in order to be able to help other people out and to have other people resonate with what it is that I went through.
Right. Well, in all honesty, the journaling part, I was really more of a raw, humored Pollyanna. Like all my friends always think like I'm upbeat all the time.
Right.
And I have bad days, you know. The wrath of Khan comes out sometimes on my kids. You know, like I'm not always like perfectly happy all the time. Who the hell is, right?
Right.
So I wrote it like, if you read some of them, I don't have my book on me to read something quick, but like they're all, I tried to be my humorous self because I always try to see humor in everything. I mean, there is a lot of laughter and you just have to like find it. So I wrote about things in my snarky sense of humor. Then when I went back and read it, I realized really where I was at that time, like what was really bothering me, like what was I really feeling. So when I wrote my book, I took those excerpts, put them in the book, and then I wrote really the behind the scenes, what was truly happening at that time. Because it's not all happy and roses and butterflies and stuff. You know what I mean? It's all like people saw the butterfly happy stuff of me and they'd be like, I don't know how you're doing it, Con. Like, how are you doing it? And I'm like, it's friggin' sucks, but I'm doing it. You know what I mean? So I wrote really what was going on behind the scenes. I mean, like, for instance, I had to have drains in my chest. Like I had so many surgeries, but the main drains I had were from my mastectomies. So I had this drain and they give you this surgical bra. It is the worst god awful thing. It's like this white thing that zips up the front and you only have like 3 of them. So if your drain leaks in the night, right, it's like blood, like liquid and blood that mixes in there.
Right.
And it's on your sheets, it's on your bra. So one night I went through 3 of my bras, my sheets. I was like, I'm taking this thing out. So I wake up the next morning. It's stitched to your skin. So I thought, you know what? I'm, Marcus Welby, MD today. I'm going to clip the stitch. So I clipped the stitch. And I'm not even kidding you. I'm probably over exaggerating, but I think the drain is at least 4 inches inside your body. Like when you pull that thing out. So I'm in the shower and it comes out and I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah,
right?
Now's Connie's done it.
I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Yeah. So meanwhile, this huge worm, like this sounds really disgusting, but it was like a blood worm comes out and that's what was stopping it up. So it was leaking everywhere. So my boyfriend at the time goes, you need to bring that in and show it to your surgeon. I'm like, that's pretty funny. So I'm like, I'm bringing this like blood worm in a Ziploc bag. And my breast surgeon's like, well, like this is the first time this has ever happened. But if something odd's going to happen, it's going to be with you. So we're good. So he said, well, I might have to put the drain back in. And I was like, oh my God, like, please don't do this to me. So I ended up, just because I was Dr. Marcus Welby at that moment, I paid the price for that because I had to have my chest drained. Where they put like a needle in and pulled out liquid so it stops. Because what happens is people don't understand when you have a mastectomy, it's such a weird situation that you go through. But if you think of a breast implant, deflate it, have it be a heavier plastic and have it be puckered around the edges so it's very sharp. So my implants now are in between my chest wall and my muscle. So they create a pocket. The pocket is what fills with fluid. And when those expanders, which you first start out with, because they put, saline in your expanders until you get your chest where you want it, like you're the bionic woman, that sharp part of the expander is like flapping around in that pocket with liquid. And like it hits you, like takes your breath away. So it was a very hard process. I didn't talk about that so much, but when I went back and wrote my book, I really wrote about the pain of everything and how hard it was, because I'm not sugarcoating anything. I'm telling it like it is. Because you know what happens is you ask someone how things go and they go, oh, you're going to be fine. It's nothing, right?
Right.
And then you're in it and you're like, holy shit. Like if someone had told me this, I would have been like, I'm out, But what was so interesting is when I went to my plastic surgeon in the very beginning, like she asked me literally 6 times, do you want to do this at the time you have your mastectomies? I said, yeah. I think I had in my mind, because I'm an idiot, that I was going to go in, have my breast tissue removed with the mastectomies, and then they were going to put implants in, and I was going to call it a day and like, see you later, I'm fine. right? Not what happened. They put the expander in, they stretch you back out. And she had asked me several times, do you want to have that done, or you can always wait? And I'm like, why wait? Like, why add one more thing to my list of things to do? And I ended up doing it. And now I understand why they offer you the ability to come back and do it later, because it is very painful. You know, so there's a lot of things that I kind of unveiled, like behind the curtain of Oz, as to what really transpires with a breast cancer diagnosis, with what I had to go through. But the real thing that happened is I wrote that whole book to put my cancer to bed and just be like, you know what? I lived through it. I'm alive. I'm good. I want to write about it. And it was very cathartic to write. I mean, I love to write. So I wrote all of that, and I thought, well, I'm going to put a big bow on this book and bury it in the backyard. And then what came of it, so it's called How Connie Got Her Rack Back. I wanted to have it called How Connie Got Her Boobs Back. But then at the time that it was coming out, I was traveling in airports. You know how they have the Hudson News where the books are facing out? And I thought, no one is ever going to put How Connie Got Her Boobs Back, like facing outwards for people in an airport to see. Not that it was going to be there, but I'm just like thinking that.
Yeah, that would be more on the inside where the where the other boobs are.
Right.
Yeah, okay, I got you.
Right. So I changed it to rack. So How Connie Got Her Rack Back is what I named the book. So anyway, I wrote the book, and what I got out of it has been really remarkable. I mean, people have written me or called me and said, you know, I didn't know what to expect. It's almost like the what to expect when you're expecting book kind of a thing, right? I didn't know what to expect, and it really helped me get through my journey. Or from a husband, it helped me understand what my wife was going through, or friend or daughter, or whatever. So it's been really great that I've gotten that feedback, and I realized that writing it was bigger than my need to write it. You know what I mean?
Right. It had more of a purpose than just for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I totally get that. I mean, hell, I mean, this show in itself was meant more for others than it was for myself. I mean, I just came to the realization that my deal is that there was a moment in time where I believe that my higher power kind of like reflected what it is that I needed to know. And I moved forward from there. And it turned out to be the Arisen Strength Inspirational Podcast, which then turned out to be the Speaking the Heart Podcast Network. You know, so
yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, I know totally of what it is that you're saying. I totally agree, because let me tell you something, folks. Connie really affects a lot of people within my local area, the 518 area code. You know, in the Tri-City area here in New York, you know, she does a tremendous amount of work in regards to that. Right now, she's kind of, you know, hating life when it comes to this pandemic, because she can't be able to do all the things. And personally, I'm a little bit perturbed because the golf tournament isn't going on that I would have been glad to be part of. But yeah, you know, I mean, you just hit the nail on the head, and that was your journaling, your book, your cathartic process was definitely meant for more than just yourself. It was meant for others to be able to resonate with what it is that you were going through. And you know what? And I can tell you this, just by what it is that you're talking about, right? Even the port that ended up, you know, you ended up deciding, oh, well, I'm going to play doctor for a second. Even that's something that a lot of people can resonate with. Somebody right off the top of my head, another host of the Speaking the Heart Podcast Network, her name's Cassie Nolan. She has a port, which is always constantly being aggravated and always constantly being an issue. She deals with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and she also deals with a number of other conditions, comorbid conditions. But, you know, that's something that she could absolutely laugh at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like with you. As disgusting as it might sound, as really serious as it might sound. And here's the thing, folks, it is. It is serious. And it is, you know, it is something that's hard. But when you're in survival mode, and I think that you can agree with me on this, when you're in survival mode, you let a lot of other things just kind of like say, you know, this isn't going to be parking in my mindset right now, because I'm just dealing with what I'm dealing with, and I'm just doing what it is that I can do for the now.
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true. And, you know, so talking about like working from home, I got to step back for 1 second and tell you a funny story. So when I was sick, I had so many medications. Literally, my bathroom counter was like a spice rack, right? So I did webinars all the time. So trainings, mostly men, because I'm in the auto industry. So I went to take, I can't remember what the heck I was supposed to take, but I accidentally put an Ambien in my mouth. And I almost swallowed it. And I get on the call, I'm like, well, boys, this could have been a really short call. I almost took an Ambien, but like all those kinds of funny things would happen to me working from home. But I get what you're talking about when I'm flipping all around. But when you talked about like looking at a screen for 2 hours, I was looking at my computer screen one time and it went blank. You know how like it has like a little, right?
Yeah.
And I realized, I'm like, oh my God, I look like Uncle Fester's sister. And I don't have any pictures of myself bald other than the one in my book with the blue hat, because we have a blue hat story, my kids and I. And when I got my wig, this woman said, well, let's have you try this blue hat on, because like it goes with your eyes and blah, blah. It's got this big honking flower on the side. So mind you, the kids are 7 and 8 at the time. And my daughter says, hey, Mom, where's the blue hat? So she tries the blue hat on. I take her picture in it. And I think the kids had swapped pajamas. If I look right in my book, I think at the pictures, the kids have their pajamas swapped. So she's wearing like race car ones. He's wearing flowers or something. And they pose with the hat. Well, we laughed so hard about that hat. And then the kids said to me, Mom, if you pick me up from Y time, because they went to an after school program, Y time. If you pick us up from Y time wearing that hat, I would die. So the next day I show up.
Yeah, that was a mistake.
Yeah. Oh, do not ever dare me to do anything, because it's not good. It's not going to bode well for you. So I go pick them up from the after school program the next day, and they're like, Alyssa can raise her eyebrow. I can't do that. And she goes, so where's the blue hat? And I was thinking to myself, it is on, kid. So the next day, I go pick them up. I don't have my wig on underneath. My head is bald, okay? I'm laughing all the way from my house to St. George's Church in Clifton Park where they were going, thinking to myself, if anybody saw me laughing alone in the car, they're going to think like I'm on some kind of crazy drug. But I get in there, and my kids' eyes popped out of their sockets, elicited. And Alex just laughed. She's like, oh my God, my mother's crazy. But we laughed about it. And I think it was a really great lesson in like laughing at yourself,
Well,
so
it's
we
a
always
lifetime experience, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we always talk about, put on a blue hat, like make fun of yourself kind of a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one thing that's special about this particular show is that it was built on its pillars and foundations. Now, I already said what the pillars were, and that was, to support and to empower and then to celebrate. Because after all that work, and we just talked about a lot of stuff right there, right? That's a lot of work, and we have the right to celebrate. And that was your celebration, was with the blue hat. Then we also have the foundations. Well, the foundations are, number one is take ownership of you. Well, I think Connie did that throughout the whole damn thing. Then we've got, the power of turning the thought. Yeah, I think we got that. And then it was the freedom of acceptance. Where was the acceptance piece? Was it always there? I mean, like, was it one of those things as to where it's like you just accepted what it is that you were doing, mainly because probably, you had already seen it with your mom. So you had a little bit of acceptance there, and then you went ahead and did something about it? Or was there another point in time as to where you see yourself accepting what it is that was going on?
I think initially I had a little bit of a shock when I was diagnosed, but then, after mulling it over, I did come to acceptance, because ironically, the summer prior to my diagnosis, I was contemplating having my breast removed prophylactically as a prevention, for breast cancer.
Okay.
Actually, about a year before that. And, my ex-husband at the time, we were still married. He thought I was being crazy, but to fight my insurance company to help me. And then they probably spent, my treatment was probably close to $500,000 by the time I'm done, all said and done with everything.
Right.
So I don't think it was foolish at all, but I accepted it because I kind of felt like it was my path. Like my mom said, she was always waiting for it. I feel like I was waiting for it, but I didn't ever think I was going to get it in my 30s, like ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was the biggest shocker of all, I think. I had to accept it. And I think, a lot of people, I don't want to talk about other people and say that this is true. Maybe I'm being wrong, but I think a lot of people find out bad news and they wallow. There are people who do that. Then there's other people who are like, all right, what's the plan? Like, I'm that person, like, what's the plan? What's the game plan? Like, I can't think too much about this. I need to know what is step A, B, C, and D, all the way to Z till I'm done. And that's where my mind was at. But yeah, I think I hit a level of acceptance pretty early on because of my history.
Yeah, and you make a very good point, and it's one that we intended to shed the light on in the beginning, was the fact that acceptance doesn't mean that you accept it and then you're done. It's like acceptance is really that moment in time as to where you're like, look, I'm going through this, now what? Because for me, it's always going to be what's next, right? Because I was always, it didn't matter what it was, whether it be sports, whether it be business, whether it be podcasting, whatever it is. Hell, I built a podcast network off of what's next. It would never really stopped. Still to this day really hasn't stopped. I tried slowing it down a bit, but it hasn't stopped. Here it is. The acceptance piece is really important, because you have the taking the ownership there, of which is certainly necessary, because nobody's going to do that for you. And then the second portion of the power of turning the thought, which is really to get your mindset right. My dear friend Claudia Israel, who was the host of the Mindset with me, she was a co-host of the Mindset with me before she had passed. She was all about utilizing our mindset to be our best ally versus our worst enemy. And
I love that.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, I love that.
So that was when I realized, when we said acceptance, it wasn't really just accepting the fact that, oh, okay, I'm dealing with a debilitating injury. I'm going to suffer and I'm going to struggle for the rest of my life, because I know what that's like. I never accepted it. I never accepted any of what my challenges were, whether it be my depression, whether it be my suicidality, whether it be addiction, whether it be, codependency or whatever. I never accepted it because I was always fighting it. I was always in that fight. I was always surviving it. And then when it came to the realization, it's like, okay, when I came to the realization of what acceptance was, I realized that it wasn't just accepting the fact that I'm going to suffer and I'm going to struggle for the rest of my life. I don't have to do that. I can accept the fact that I'm dealing with some stuff, right? And then I can make the changes that need to be made in order for my life to be improved on it, despite what it is that I'm going through. And that's really what resonates with you, because you went through a lot of stuff, but you went ahead and you built your journal, and then a whole lot of stuff just kind of stemmed off of it, right?
Yeah, well, kind of like the same thing you were talking about with your show becoming your podcast network. It's a very similar dynamic with what happened to me. So, I think a lot of it has to do with not letting your story to define you and be your story. Your illness rather, not be your story.
Right.
And so what happened was, I wrote my book, I released it. I decided to have basically like a book launch party to thank my family and friends. And because I'm in business, I asked some business friends to donate some items to have a silent auction. And at the time, I partnered with the American Cancer Society's Making Strides Against Breast Cancer campaign, because I wanted to give money to breast cancer. So we raised $4,600 the first year. And then the 2 subsequent years after that, I did galas, like where we had lots of people. And I think it was like 29,000 between those 2 years that was donated to different organizations. And then in 2014, the end of 2014, I thought, you know what? I want to know the people we're helping, because all organizations are wonderful. But when you give your money to some places, you don't know exactly where it's going. And I wanted people to know that if someone lived in Albany County, if they gave money to my foundation, it was going to go to somebody in Albany County who really needed it. So the idea behind my foundation is that there's anonymity there, where you're not knowing who you're helping, but knowing that your money is going to someone who lives in your county, or in fact, even in your town. So it might be somebody that's behind you in the grocery store. You don't know.
Right.
I started, like I was talking about with the meal thing, because my friend John had so sweetly given me meals, and I wanted to do restaurant meals. So I went through this long process. No restaurants were willing to give me like a voucher. They wanted me to do gift cards. So I went to my attorney, and I said, can I broaden this base a little bit of financial help? So basically, in a nutshell, to cut out the bylaws and read those to you,
Mm-hmm.
they're very boring. I'm not a lawyer. It is, we provide financial services to cancer patients, all types of cancer patients. Like, the name of my foundation is Get Your Rack Back, GYRB. And we chose that name, my kids and I talked about it, because people knew me as the Get Your Rack Back chick, because initially I had all my events called, the Get Your Rack Back Gala or whatever.
Right.
So the kids were like, just stick with it, Mom, because everybody knows you as that. But the misnomer is that we don't just help breast cancer patients. We help all cancer patients. Mm-hmm. So we kind of did a little bit of like a renaming or rebranding, if you will, and said GYRB. So if you want to know more information, you can find it on gyrb.org. So it's not all spelled out. So we provide financial services to cancer patients in the 518 area. And we initially started in the capital region. Then I expanded all the way up to Plattsburgh. We started with 2 doctors' offices, and I thought initially, you know what, hey, if we could help 2 cancer patients a month with $500 each, that'd be huge, right? Well, since that time, we have moved to having 19 provider offices that we help, and we're usually around like 6 to 8 people a month. And, a couple of years ago, we hit 100 patients. And then last year, I didn't do the gala. I needed to take a break because both my kids were going to college. I needed a little bit more time to handle my family thing. So I didn't do my gala. And now this year, we had the gala planned. And because of the pandemic, we were unable to hold it. So, my goal is to always help 100 patients a year. So that's $50,000 that we have sent out the door. And to date, we've helped over 200 people. I'm really happy about that. Like, I think, knowing that we're making a difference for someone for right now, I knew I wasn't going to solve the problem of cancer, right? So I said, what can I do to help people today? Like someone who says, I need groceries. There are legit people who are having to choose between paying for their groceries for their family and getting their treatment or paying for their medication. I mean, one of my medications when I finished chemo was $525 a month. And that's what I had to pay out of pocket. I remember going to the pharmacy, and I know the pharmacist well, and I'm like, Mary, this is like a payment on a Mercedes,
Yep. For like somebody on disability, in most of the cases, it's over half of the income that they get on the month.
Right. So there's a lot of people who are really struggling. So I said, you know what, if I know I can help somebody like this week, that's going to have something in their hand. So we provide gas and grocery gift cards assistance. We also provide patients with medical copayment assistance. So I know from speaking to my provider offices that we are one of the very few that do that, and the only one that does it locally. We provide up to $500. So it might be like somebody has a $300 bill at, let's say, Saratoga Hospital, and then they get $200 in a grocery gift card. Right? So everybody gets $500. And then I realized too that when I was diagnosed, it was around Christmas time. It was just before Thanksgiving. So when I had my mastectomy, it was just before Christmas. And I got thinking about it, and I know a lot of people struggle anyway. Like, how would you go Christmas shopping for your kids? So we put together a Christmas stocking drive, and last year was our 5th year. And to date, we have stuffed and delivered over 2,000 holiday stockings to kids affected by cancer. So either they have it, a sibling has it, or a parent of theirs has it. So that's been a huge thing that we've done. Like, I'm so proud of that. And we have a lot of fun. I've got lots of kids involved with that. I think the most heartfelt thing that happened to me was a couple of years ago, because the event we have is called Diamonds in December, which is the night before the stocking stuffing. And we have a great time, and the guests come and bring some stocking stuffers. And then the next day we have an army of people that stuff, and we had asked for some kid volunteers to come the night of the event to help like pre-sort all of the stocking stuffers. And I had a patient that we've helped. She had her ex-husband, who the daughter had asked her father to drop her off because she wanted to help sort the stockings. And the mom came to me and said, my daughter wanted to be here because we received stockings last year when we really needed them. And it meant a lot to my kids. So they wanted to be here to help sort. And that like meant a lot. It was like a full circle moment, you know?
Well, that's another thing that kind of like got my interest when it came to you and learning your story and learning about your foundation is you also did something that was also very human interest, like that you would reach out to each person individually with,
Yep.
something that's kind of special. So why don't you go ahead and tell me about that?
Well, every patient that we have that comes through our system, and, like a nurse navigator, let's say, at a local oncology office will reach out to me and say, hey, I've got a patient, and they fill out this online form, and I have this section on this online form where I want them to tell me about the patient and their family, because I want to write them a personal letter. So every patient we help receives a personal letter from me, and I want it to be encouraging words. Like I'm going to say something different to someone who is a stage 1 cancer patient than I am sometimes to a cancer patient who's a stage 4, who's just fighting to live. It's a very different conversation. So I had a patient, a male, who had, I think it was colon cancer. We have a lot of men that we help, honestly. I was kind of shocked by that, but we have a lot of men. It's not all women. It's not all breast cancer. He was, I think, maybe 65. And, for men that don't get a basket like women, I put together a cute little basket with soft socks and chapstick and all that kinds of stuff. And then men men get the short end of the stick.
Yeah, we get socks.
No, they just get like the card with the gifts in it because they don't care about that. I did a little poll. They don't care. They want a basket.
We'll take the gift card.
So they'll take the gift card. This is when my son was a senior in high school. So now he's a sophomore in college. So this is a couple years ago. And I got a phone call. So it's my daughter's first year in college. I get a call, and my phone is my work phone, my foundation phone, my personal phone. It's all one phone. So I get this phone call, and this man is crying. And as a mom, my first instinct is, oh my God, what's happened to my kid? Like, is she fine because she's away? I don't know why I thought that, but that's what I thought. Mm-hmm. And he asked me if I was who I was. And I said, yes. And he told me who he was. So he's a stage 4 cancer patient. And I had written in there, I said, I know that things are difficult. And I know sometimes it's just hard to put one foot in front of the other, but you got to keep fighting, And so I gave him, I think it was grocery gift cards. So he calls me, he's crying, asked me who I am. I said, I am who I am. And then he said, I didn't think anybody cared about me. Mm-hmm. I live by myself. I just left the oncology office and I got your cards and I'm just so grateful. And, he was like weeping. I know that $500 to some people doesn't mean a lot. It means a lot to me, but to some people it's not like thousands, but it's meaningful in the gesture, I'm hoping. And I hope that taking the time to learn about people and write them something is what really touches them. And that's what I have found is to be true. People have said to me, what means more to me than even the gift cards is you writing me a letter telling me I'm going to be okay or right. To keep going. So I think sometimes it's important to have an outside voice to give you encouragement. I remember when I was ill, a few of my friends had their friends, I didn't even know them, write me cards. I mean, card writing has kind of fallen by the wayside if you ask a lot of people. Most people can't even handwrite anymore. I mean, my kids were the last kids in school to learn how to write in cursive. They don't even teach that anymore. So to write something I think is really meaningful to people. And I know how much that meant to me. I want to give that back. So everybody gets a letter from me. And then I follow up with them to make sure they're doing okay. And it's hard because it's a fine line that I walk because it's a lot of heavy-heartedness when you know what's going on with people. I cry a lot. My board worries about me. They say, are you okay? I don't want you to carry this so heavily, But last year, I lost 3 patients that I really got to know well, very short few months. Mm-hmm. And it was devastating. So I don't know, hats off to all these oncologists, nurses, and people in the medical field who lose patients a lot. It's very difficult. And that's been the hardest part for me. If you ask me what's the hardest part, that's it. It's not putting together a fundraiser, which, by the way, that is not easy either. But
tell me about it. I know.
Yeah, the hardest part has been losing people. It's absolutely devastating. So I knew going into this, we could do great things for people. We could touch people with what they need for today, but there was also going to be a lot of heartache.
Mhm.
And I really work very hard to temper the good with the bad, and
Yeah.
that's kind of really why last year I went dark a little bit, like I just had hit a wall. And went to my board. I said, I just need to take a break because really a lot of the planning I do myself.
Mhm.
So I decided I'm going to take a break. I'm not going to do the gala this year. My kids were getting ready to go to school. I had a lot to get my son ready for college. So I just wanted to make sure I worked on my family a little bit. Because what happens is you take on other things and then all of a sudden other things that are really important fall through the cracks, like your family.
Well, that's it, right? Because when you're
Yeah.
going through some stuff, doesn't mean that everyday stuff is
Right.
done, because it continues on, right?
Right.
And
Exactly.
the world keeps on turning, whether you're in the game or not. That's something that a lot of people don't think about, because they think that, oh, well, they're dealing with cancer, or they're dealing with fibromyalgia, or they're dealing with depression, or whatever that is, and they're sitting there and they're like constantly thinking about all that, and then they get hit by something that everybody gets hit by, right? Everybody gets hit by rejection. Everybody gets hit by relationships that don't altogether work out. Everybody is in the same boat when it comes to the pandemic that's going on right now. Those types of things are continuing to happen. And then you'll hear somebody from the outside in will say, well, we're all going through this. Well, yeah, you are. But at the same time, there's also other people that are going through some other stuff that's on top of this. Even the littlest thing can really rock the boat a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So can I tell them?
Sure.
Okay. Connie was just talking about how it is that her foundation works and how it goes about, kind of tempering, the bad with a little bit of good, and the good with a little bit of bad, and everything in that sense. But let me tell you something. I've known Connie long enough. We're kind of dangerous. We're kind of dangerous together, because we're like brother and sister a little bit. Because like we really, kind of do things the same way. Sometimes when we are like hit with adversity, we're going to surprise you. We're not going to go down. We're not going to stay down. We're actually going to get up and we're going to start swinging. And I don't mean that literally, although I used to box a little bit. But in this case, we're going to do something together on the Speaking the Heart podcast network, because Connie Bramer is going to be a new host on the Speaking the Heart podcast network. She's going to be bringing together a show that is called Laughter and Inspiration with Connie Bramer, and I'm going to let her tell you all about it. Go ahead.
Okay, so most people know me as a smart ass. My friends
No,
do.
really? You?
Yeah.
Never.
So people who have been following my page, the Speaking to the Heart Laughter and Inspiration page, know that I am in a mad search for all things funny, like all the funny comments, and absolutely also inspirational comments. And I think we are, even before the pandemic, because you and I have been talking about this for a year, right? Pandemic's just been since March. We'd said back then, people need to have some laughter and they need to be inspired by something. So my goal with this show, which we're going to laugh a lot because I'm a spaz and it's going to be interesting, is that we're going to laugh about things. We're going to talk about interesting topics. And I want people to feel, after they're done listening to it, I want you to feel lighter. And I want you to feel inspired. Maybe you're inspired to do something. Maybe you're inspired by something that you heard. But there's going to be a mix of laughter and inspiration. And I've got a great lineup of guests. And we're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, we are. Listen, I have put together a lot of different shows throughout my history. I've done over 750 different episodes of podcasting out there with different hosts and with the network. I've never been really kind of like intrigued more when it comes to doing a show. And here's another thing. I never worried less.
Because, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah, because I knew that I got the right person. I knew that Connie was the right person. I knew that Connie was the right person to be able to do this. I knew that Connie had the history to be able to say, yeah, I've been through some stuff. Yeah, I know what it's like. And she's been through it in a number of different ways. She hasn't just been just the patient. She's also been the supporter of, or the affected by, with somebody else who was dealing with some stuff. And she's still that amazing person that she is. She's still that rock and roll.
Thank you.
You are, I mean, you really do have that rock and roll mentality. You got that way about you as to where it's like, yeah, I'm going through some stuff, but watch me now. That really kind of hit me, because if anybody who knows the Arisen Strength motivational piece that started all of what it is that I do, in the end, it said, now I'm going to show you what I can do. And it said, unlike you, I'll not sit idly by and watching people suffer while being sitting against you. No, instead, I'll help them find their strength and their purpose, and then you'll have more of a problem than what you ever expected. And that is what this show was meant to do. It was to help people realize that they were being supported. It was to help people realize that they were being empowered. And then, damn right, we have the right to celebrate. And together, we are going to make a difference. We have the ability. Yes, we are going through some stuff, but that doesn't mean that we don't have capability of being able to make a difference in this world. Connie is a prime example of this. I personally know a lot of people who are a prime example of this. And I know that this particular show, Laughter and Inspirations with Connie Bramer, is going to make a big difference in a lot of people's lives. You don't have to have cancer. You can deal with everyday stuff and still be affected by this show. Just look at the Facebook group. People keep on mentioning it and saying, I love this group because it just really makes my day. I've been going through some stuff, or maybe I had a bad day or whatever, or I come here first thing in the morning in order to be able to see what it is, because Connie's got a regimen to where she's doing it on a consistent basis. And I remember when we were having the discussion, it's like, we want other people to participate. And then all of a sudden, other people started throwing in of what they thought was funny too. And it really is starting to really kind of take off. And I think that this show is going to do the same thing.
Yeah, well, I got to find my favorite thing today. My friend Jen put something up today. I got to find it. It talks about like the guy with a Halloween mask, right?
Okay. Yep.
And it says, so far the pandemic, I got to find it, but it's basically the gist is, so far the pandemic's been like this. And it shows like the guy from Halloween. And then it says, and by the way, the next 5 months spell Jason.
Oh, wow.
I was like, wow, my head is blown. Yeah, it spells Jason. July, August, September, October, November. And one of my friends, he did like a Kramer gif and he goes, my mind is blown. I love finding funny things to talk about, and some of them, you just go on and you like it or you write something about it, but it's all about getting people to like just have a little bit of a lighthearted moment. I've gotten into the dog shaming thing. Like they have all these pictures of dogs with people putting signs around their neck with the stupid things they've done. I laugh at stupid stuff. So I will be laughing, looking up things. And my daughter's room is above me. And because she's 19 and she can't get up to do anything, she'll like FaceTime me because that's what kids do. And she'll FaceTime me. She'll be like, Mom, what are you laughing about down there? And it's me just cracking up at all these things that I find and I post.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right.
It's great to laugh. My most favorite thing to do.
And that's what the show is going to be all about. I mean, it's going to tell some reality, right? I mean, you got,
absolutely.
You're going to be doing interviews with people who have gone through some stuff of their own. And, it doesn't necessarily have to be, catastrophic. It could be just be like something that just kind of took them off track a little bit, kind of took them just a little bit off of where it is that their path had initiated or started from. Either way, you don't have to be going through a whole lot in order to be able to realize, hey, you know what? Some humor involved in inspiration, man, it can definitely make a difference. It can balance some things out. We're not going to cure anything. We're not going to fix anything. What we're going to do is that we're going to help you rise above life's challenges, which is what the Speaking the Heart Podcast Network's all about. And Podcast Network stemmed from the Arisen Strength Inspirational podcast from the very beginning. So, this show here, Laughter and Inspiration with Connie Bramer, is going to make a difference and be just an awesome addition to our register. So it's going to be awesome. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you for your confidence in me. I appreciate it.
That's easy. All right. So, folks, her name is Connie Bramer. And how do you get your book? Where do people find you so that they can make sure that they can attach themselves to that smart ass that you are?
Okay. I have my foundation website, which is GYRB.com. That's short for Get Your Rack Back. GYRB.org. So GYRB.org. My book's available on there. And I also am an author on Biz Catalyst 360, which is an online digest. But you can also find some articles I've written in my snarky voice on thehumorofitall.wordpress.com. So I like to write a lot of funny, stupid things.
Cool.
I get struck by things that crack me up. So I feel compelled to write about them.
So are you on Instagram or Twitter or anything like that?
I am. Don't ask me my handle because I can't remember. But but like Facebook is my thing. My kids tell me I'm really old because like Facebook's my thing. But yes, I'm on Instagram as Constance Bramer, which is my real name. My name I hear about when I get in trouble.
Yeah.
And then I think I also have a GYRB_org for my Instagram. And then Twitter is Constance Bramer.
Cool. Folks, check her out. It's going to be a real fun time. We're going to be doing a whole lot of things. You're going to see a lot of different promotions. You're going to see a lot of people kind of like laughing and just, doing a bunch of emojis and everything like that. Look, this is a time in order to nurture. This is a time in order to heal. This is a time in order to make a difference for one another. And I can't think of a better show to be able to work with in order to make that happen in the best way that I know how with the Speaking the Heart Podcast Network and Laughter and Inspiration with Connie Bramer. Connie, thanks so very much for being here on the show. And I'm really looking forward to working with you.
Me too. Thanks so much, Shane.